Oh, this is a Private Investigator Experience podcast, and I'm your host, Phil Little. On this channel, we talk about the life and cases of PI, and I also use my investigative lens and international experience to report on issues that around the world that could affect us here in our own communities. From my military, law enforcement, intelligence service, and global security background, I've had the opportunity to work around the world, and I've gained some experience, and I have a lens to see events for possible violence that could affect us here in America. Before I get to this report, would you help me by liking, sharing, subscribing, and the drill? Hit that notification bell for future posts. Thank you so much. One area I get asked about is were we really formed as a Christian nation? And if so, why do so many of the young people they don't believe in America? They're involved in all kinds of anti-American things. Recent reports show that only about 31% of the 18 to 35 say they are proud of America. And well over half feel the systems should be changed. And that feeds into this socialist agenda that is prime in our schools and higher places of learning. This is an alarming percentage for the future of the greatest country experiment in the world history. 60 years ago, when I was in school, we would never have imagined that there would be such a decline in love and respect for our country. What has happened? What is the main source? Is it reversible? First, where we are today has happened on our watch, friends. Freedom has to be resecured by every generation. Freedom is not free or without cost at times. There's a time to push back evil before it grows. If we don't, we will find ourselves fighting for our very lives. Sometimes good intentions lead to a path of slavery. Why do some young people take to the streets shouting slogans, but they don't know what they mean? And when you ask them, they say, oh, that's what we are told to say. After listening to so many young people show ignorance of how and why our nation was formed, my attention was drawn to the takeover education system by the progressive left with their focus on social issues and how bad America has been. Why? When you do research on where changes that have negatively affected our education system, it takes you back to John Dewey from the 1800s and grew from there. And he keeps coming up as the architect of changing the way education was taught. And we're going to look at it in a minute, and I'm not really getting into that in this post, but the education system that was founded when America was formed back in even the 1600s before we had our independence, it was based on a biblical and a Bible structure for learning. In the last 50 years, the way history has been taught has marginalized or deleted completely the true historical record. It paints our founders as opportunists to enrich themselves or as racist slave owners, focusing on how bad America has been and how this worked out for us. Recent standardized test data shows that there are only 13% of eighth graders are proficient in U.S. history. Potentially, this reflects the fragmented curriculum. This supports critics' claims that progressive methods prioritize ideology over fact. But that is the real truth about our founding of our nation and those men that founded it. What is amazing is there is volumes of facts about the founders and our history, but it's been taken out of history books. And there wasn't too many crying foul. That's not the fact. You can't do that. So now, finally, there are some groups are explaining and expanding, teaching the facts. One is Wall Builders, run by Tim Barton, whose group is helping America remember and preserve the true history of America. Check Wall Builders out online. They have one, I think they have the largest private collection of original documents, and you can find every founder, their writings, what they said, what they believed there, and you can check out what I'm saying just to see if it's true. I'm only going to be touching the surface here because it would take hours to get into the whole area of who our founders were and what they did. After doing this deep dive investigation, I wanted to share some facts for you to consider. and for you to share. Let's start with the Articles of Independence. Now, this was the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America, when in course of human events, it goes to say, becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and that's going to be England, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God, not some king, not some government or Congress or Senate, no, of nature's God entitle them a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. So they do that in doing this article of independence. And they go on to say in these writings, we behold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I'm going to jump down, and you can check this out for yourself, the whole document. But they also stated here, we therefore, the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress assembled, appealing to the supreme judge of the world, not some local or government judge, but the judge of the world, for the rectitude of our intention, do in the name and by the authority of the people of these colonies solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connections between them and the state of Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states, they have the full power to levy war, conduct peace, conduct alliances, establish commerce, and to do all those acts and things which independent states may rightly do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine, again, providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor as they sign these documents. When the founders signed these documents, they did put their lives on the line. Only about a third of the colonists supported breaking from England. Another third wanted to stay with England. Another third, oh, we'll just wait and see what happens and we'll go with the winner. There are skeptics who say that the founders were looking for a way to get rich. That is ignorant of the fact. Just as those who say that the founders were not believers in God. That's ignorant, because the facts don't support that. After the Constitution was established, it wasn't tight enough for them. They wanted to make sure that our freedoms were enshrined in such a way that the government could not interfere or override them. And the first 10 amendments are the ones we hear so much about. The First Amendment, Congress will make no laws respecting, establishing a religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or the press, and the right of the people to assemble and petition the government for redress. Now, no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. It's enshrined that the government can't interfere with our religion. Second Amendment, a well-regulated militia, now listen to this, being necessary to the security of a free state. The Second Amendment wasn't just about hunting or sporting. They believed that the only way a nation could be free was to have an armed citizenry that would stop an overreaching government from trying to infringe on their rights or put them under bondage. The Third Amendment, no soldier shall in time of peace be quartered in any home. And that was for that time frame. Right today, I don't think we have that problem. The Fourth Amendment, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, effects against unreasonable searches and seizure. And you can read that and get the rest of it. The Fifth Amendment, no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury. except in cases with the military or in war or militia. And you can read more about that. The Sixth Amendment. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed. And there's more to that that you can read, which has some more detail. And in the Seventh Amendment, I think it's good and suits that common law when the value in controversy shall exceed $20. Obviously, $20 back then was a little more than that. And then the right of a trial by jury shall be preserved. And it says that no other court can overturn a jury's finding on these rules of the common law. Eighth Amendment, assessing bail shall not be required. Ninth Amendment, the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. And then the 10th, the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. Who wrote these Bill of Rights? Well, James Madison wrote the amendments as a solution to limit government power and protect individual liberties through the Constitution. For example, the founders saw the ability to speak and worship freely as a natural right protected by the First Amendment. And Congress is prohibited from making laws on religion or abridging free speech. The Bill of Rights was added to the Constitution because the Constitution lacked limits on government power, and they wanted to make sure there was no question about it. The Bill of Rights was ratified. The House approved 17 amendments, and they said 12 of these were approved by the Senate, and they were sent to the states, and then the states approved 10 of those. Those were ratified and approved on December 15, 1791. We were given the freedom of religion and free speech, but we won't keep them unless we stand up for them. Yes, we the people must be vigilant, speaking against those who would tread on our freedoms. Remember, government likes to expand power, and they will take all power that we will allow them to take. And the only barrier to that, again, is we the people of every generation. And my friends, I'm right there at the top of this. We have failed in standing up for our rights as we've seen so many of them taken away, what we've seen happen during the pandemic. In fact, in recent past, got elected leaders who say, oh, we're not a Christian nation. That is brazen, and it's an attitude that's not based on the facts. It is true that Christianity is not a state religion. In fact, America is very open to people of all religions. Where the problem is that our openness and freedoms are being used by those coming in on our openness and generosity and then trying to change our country to their beliefs. For too long, we've been silent and allowed millions to come to our country without requiring them to assimilate into our way of life and language. To keep this from going on for hours, I will give the words of a few of the founders on their positions about what knowledge and power they were using to form the United States of America. Are we a Christian nation? Was that the heritage we were founded on? Our founders did not want a state church, government funded, who could hand down how we worship. But our founding fathers did say, and this is all in the records, that they were forming our nation under the teachings of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Just a few little facts here. The Mayflower Compact was signed, November 11th, 1620, after the Pilgrims came over on the Mayflower, and it was ratified by 41 of the 100 on the Mayflower signed this compact. And they came across the Atlantic in this ship in that time frame to get away from an overreaching government so they could worship God as they saw fit. Many of these pilgrims, these founding of our country, who have been disparaged in so many ways, they were in prison in England for their faith. They lost their property and livelihood. Many lost their lives trying to stand up and worship as they wanted to worship. Another factor that you might not know It is true that our first schools were founded to train Christian ministers. Yes, that's in the record and it's there. Harvard, check that out. Check out the founding papers on Harvard, Princeton, Yale, as an example. There are others. And you can find out back in the early days, our education of our young people was based on a primer that was founded on the Bible. And that went on for many, many years until the progressives started getting involved. And, they decided they were smarter than God. We have lost our Christianity in so many ways. We are embarrassed to take our faith to the market square and to public places. It is true that the founding fathers were followers of God and were using God's principles to guide their efforts. Now listen, 52 of the 55 signers of the Constitution were Orthodox Christians and believed in Jesus Christ and the Bible. And the other three believed in the Bible as divine truth and the scripture as a guide for life. So all 55 were lined up with Christian principles. The Bill of Rights clearly point to the Bible as a blueprint for their creation. Patrick Henry, known as the firebrand of the Revolution, is famous for his declaration, "Give me liberty or give me death." But in the current history books, you can't find that. It's been deleted, changed to distort history, like so much of our history has been. Well, was Patrick Henry a Christian? What did he say? I quote, he stated, "I cannot emphasize too strongly that this nation was not founded by religionists, but by Christians. Not on religions, but on the gospel of Jesus Christ. For that reason alone, people of other faiths have been given the freedom to worship here." That was Patrick Henry. Yes, he was a Christian. Thomas Jefferson, remember that name? One we should all remember, and hopefully remember that, wrote in the front of his well-worn Bible, "I am a Christian. That is to say, the doctrine of Jesus. I have little doubt, listen to this, that soon our whole country will be rallied to the Creator, and I hope to the doctrine of Jesus." He would be very disappointed, I think, in what he sees today. Now, George Washington, I think everyone knows that name. He's the father of our nation, our first president. In his farewell address to the nation on September the 17th, 1796, he's I quote, "It is impossible to govern the world without God and the Bible. Of all the deeds that lead to political prosperity, our religion and the morality are principal supporters. But I caution that morality cannot be maintained without God and religion. We cannot expect morality to prevail in exclusion of religious principles." In George Washington's prayer book, he wrote this, "My eternal and everlasting God, direct my thoughts, words, and work. Wash away my sins with the blood of the Lamb. Purge my heart with the Holy Spirit. Daily frame me more into the likeness of your Son, Jesus Christ. And may the whole world be filled with the knowledge of God and his Son, Jesus Christ." That was our first president. That was the man that fought and led battles and in unbelievable circumstances that we today could be free and worshiping and living our lives with the ability to make our own decisions. That is, think if every person had this in their hearts, that we would want to be more in the likeness of God and his Son, Jesus Christ. What a difference that would make. John Adams, our second president. And he served as the chairman of the American Bible Society. Oh, yes, and he was president. To an address of military leaders, he states, "We have no government with the power to contend with human passion unbridled with power and true religion. Our Constitution," now listen to this, "is for a moral and religious people It is wholly inadequate to any other. That would get some comments today, wouldn't it? Our first Supreme Court Justice, John Jay. He states that, now listen to this. This will go over big time today. He states when we select our national leaders, we should select Christians to maintain our nation. Now, can you imagine that today? He goes on to say, Providence has been given to us the choice of our rulers, and it is the duty and privilege of select and prefer Christians for their rulers. That's our duty. How are we doing with that? John Quincy Adams, our sixth president, and also he was the chairman of the American Bible Society, and he considered that role as his most important one. On July the 4th, 1821, he said this: the highest glory of the American Revolution is it connects the principles of civil government. Now listen to this: principles of civil government with the principles of Christianity. You know, I could go on. Every one of the founders, the writings are there to attest to how what they believed in and how they thought and how they looked at God and the Bible. But I hope I've aroused your interest to either revisit history you were taught, or if you didn't receive true history, do as I do. Check it out. Investigate. All of what I stated is available on the internet, and all the original documents are preserved. I encourage you, as I did earlier, go to the Wall Builders site, which has the largest private record of documents. You can check everything out there and read for yourself. Look at the letters, see who signed them, and documents. Remember, if good people are silent when evil speaks, then we become part of the problem, and we will lose our freedoms. Will you step out of the crowd and let your voice be heard? What do you think? What's your thoughts on this? I would love to hear from you. Do you think that I'm off base or I'm out in left field? I hope you check out the facts before you make a decision on that. But leave me your comments on any of the platforms or email me at pi777 at gmail.com. Remember, put on that investigative hat and search out the facts. Until next time, be safe. May God bless you, your family, and may God bless America.